Good day, everyone. I'm Abiodun-Solanke, just told me, speaking on behalf of the listed authors on profiling traditional fish smoking practices in Nigeria for scale-up analysis. This is being presented at IAFA 2022, themed Leading by Example, happening at Cape Town. Food safety, as you know, is a global phenomenon that is being extended to many regions of the world now. And food safety refers to routines in the preparation, handling, and storage of food meant to prevent foodborne illnesses and injury. So food safety and food hygiene are very important because they ensure that foods that are produced and handled are safe for human consumption. Food safety and food quality are still very confusing to many people. While food safety refers to hazards which may make food injurious to the health of the consumers, food quality, on the other hand, includes other attributes that influences a product's value to the consumer. Food and nutrition is still a mirage in many countries of the world, Nigeria inclusive, and we all know that many of the players in this particular value chain, they are still small scale, and that means that they use many at times traditional practices, and these traditional practices are being hampered by adoption of inappropriate practices that leads to low standard products many at times. And as we know, for food safety in Nigeria, only a very few information is available on standards. There's still paucity of data, hence the quest for this particular research or this particular review, which is to evaluate these traditional processes critically, using fish smoking as a case study to identify safety issues and recommend low-hanging upgrade measures. The characteristics of traditional fish smoking are that the method and practices remain at the empirical level. They are crude, they are not standardized, and they are not based on sound scientific principles that can ensure commercial scale, that can ensure these practices upgrading to commercial scale. Then, food legislation and traditional food control fail to provide clear mandates and authority to prevent food safety problems. Furthermore, legislation in line with international requirements are not available in many African countries, Nigeria inclusive. Then many of the existing legislation are outdated and inadequate or fragmented. And the enforcement of this particular legislation are still very problematic. As you can see, this image is showing some of the fish smoking practices that are still rampant in Nigeria. So as you can see here, the smoke is all over, which shows that the processes they are largely tedious, they are unhygienic, and they are very simple to understand. So some other characteristics of these traditional fish smoking practices are that for the handling, I told you initially that the quest of this research is to critically evaluate the safety issues based on the different value chain. So for the handling practices, we discovered that the personnel that do most of these practices, they are unhygienic, and even the harvesting facilities too. HACCP, that is hazard analysis, critical control points, are not being considered. As you can see from the first picture here, the catches are mixed, so there is no sorting and grading. And for the processing facility, for the harvesting facility, as you can see for the second picture, there is no coverage, so that means they are exposed to high temperature that favors deterioration of fish. Then gutting may not be done. Gutting is a physical control that helps in delaying deterioration. Some other practices in handling is lack of portable wash water. Many will just use the wash water available at the jetty, and many at times this wash water is already polluted, so it leads to contamination. Then the transport facilities are not appropriate. As you can see, there is no coverage, and there is no provision of refrigeration that helps in delaying deterioration. Then some other practices during pre-processing and smoking are that there is lack of dedicated facilities. Many of them just use facilities available. They don't specially dedicate some facilities that will be used for pre-processing and smoking. Then sorting and grading are still inadequate. Then there is no inappropriate controls, so no chemical or physical controls. Then many of the kilns are made with inappropriate materials. Then the fuel woods have polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons problem, which is carcinogenic. Then some other practices during packaging and storage that many still use inappropriate materials, packaging materials and methods. There's food fraud. They list what is not there, and they list some things. They do not list some things that are there. So the information, the labels on the labeling materials many at times are inadequate. Then even the storage conditions, many use packaging methods that does not protect the content inside. Then many still use insecticide and pesticide, which are hazardous to human health. So for the scale-up analysis now, there should be improved awareness by researchers, and there should be innovation transfer to end users by researchers and agencies. So that means that many of our innovations that are on the shelves of our libraries should be transferred to these end users. Then there should be education on low-cost, simple, available improvements, such as gutting. Gutting is a very simple method that can help them to prevent post-harvest losses. It can help them prevent post-harvest losses by half. So that means if they are experiencing 40% post-harvest losses, can be reduced to 20% by just gutting. Then they can use some traditional preservatives like orange peel for sliming. Then there should be more collaboration between researchers and statistic hubs like the National Bureau of Statistics, so that these statistics and this data can be available to end users. Then there should be more advocacy on non-commercialization of standards. Standards are still being sold in many countries, Nigeria inclusive. So when these standards are sold, that means many of these processors do not have access to this. And there should be development and regular updating of these standards. Then another thing is there should be improvement of interventions or technology similar to what they are doing now. If you go through this YouTube link, is a dissemination workshop of an intervention that was carried out by a team that was involved in, and what we did was to intervene by producing an improved drum kiln, which is similar to what they are used to. So adoption was very easy because they see this as something that they are used to, and something that is not really many at times dumping whatever technology or whatever indigenous knowledge they have seen to work over the years. Then we can also develop simple HACCP to document indigenous knowledge that work. If we see here, we see this particular picture as a practical guide. So it's actually a simple practical guide that was able to incorporate HACCP into the processing practices that many of these traditional processors, they use now. Then there should be more research along functional highs. There should be provision of innovations such as cooling boxes. Many of these innovations, they are cheap. A cooling box should be around 12,000, which is not something that an average processor cannot afford. Then there should be introduction of traditional options such as packaging, plant materials, herbs, and less transparent materials to actually extend the shelf life of this product. Then there should be education on labeling with correct information, especially for middle-level processors. Effective risk management. So what we were taught in HACCP is that some practices that are risky should be highlighted so that this can be prevented, because as soon as these practices are managed, you discover that the product you get at the end of it all will be an improved one. There should be meeting points between these smallholder processors and producers and processors. They should be linked with people to offtake many of their products. When they see that their products are being offtaken, when they see that their products are being of two, that is when people go there to buy off their product, they are encouraged to do more. So thank you, and God bless us all.